Mm-hmm. Whoa. Whoa. Wow. Yeah, do it. Mm-hmm. Your audio is like all staticky now for some reason. Probably. You could probably swap the servers or something. I don't know. Mm. We're live, right? So I'm just gonna make hand sounds at everyone. Maybe. Well, I can understand you, so. Who's dancing? I hope your viewers don't mind. I know it's very intrusive, but. Oh yeah, so like, do people have to be patrons to watch the stream? Okay, I will do a social post too. Don't mind me just posing for social while the stream is going. So is it just youtube.com/ whatever your URL is? Let's do it. I'll boost you. So, am I recording my audio when the episode starts, or am I recording all of this as well? Okay. Cool. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah? Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't know why I sent that snap to you. You're on the show with me. That's all good. I was like, come watch me. You're on the show with me. That's fine. That's okay. I'm gonna drink some Red Bull. Craftily. Nah, I'm not wearing one. Sorry, that was off to a great start. Very professional of me, though. Very supremely. Oh. Hmm. Don't mind me just trying to get a social tweet going as well at the same time. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if anyone shows up. But yeah, do you have anything in particular you wanted to talk about? Just on your mind, game-wise?
On my mind, game-wise, not particularly. I mean, there hasn't really been like a new Senran Kagura game out recently, so
You're running on empty.
yeah, I'm running out of material.
Gotcha.
Running out of anime material. So
That's fair. It's fair. There's a critical. No one's talking about the critical shortage of anime media right now.
yeah, I know. There's just all these assets missing from our games. Really makes me very emotional.
Global warming.
Yeah.
They're going extinct. The animes are going extinct. It's really sad.
It is really sad. I mean, soon I'll have nothing to read, at an unearthly hour of the night when the sun goes down and I have to sit alone.
And with that, let's sync up with our Audacity.
Cool, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit record. You'll count me in, right?
On how about we just hit record on go?
Okay, we'll hit record and go. Let's
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Go. Coolio. Here we go. We did it.
We did it. The hardest part.
The hardest part is getting the audio down.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. And I am going to do this thing where people won't message me on this app.
Discord?
And yeah, this magical app called Discord. And here we go, I guess. We're gonna go switch over. Now we're on the stream. I can see it.
Whoa.
Or I will be able to see it, I think. Maybe. We'll find out. So I'm just gonna start the show now. And here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 130 of The Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me is the incredible Ginny Wu. Unfortunately, Naomi isn't here this week, but I feel like the guest this week will help us elevate the show and will give us an opportunity to revisit one of my games that I feel got really shafted when it came out, Dragon Age 2. But before we get into that, hi Ginny, who are you?
Hi. I am Ginny Wu, obviously, as Jack has already just mentioned to all of you guys and gals and ladies and lads and all the other stuff. I am a freelancer. I do a lot of video game writing, do a lot of video game podcasting, a lot of video game related crying about games that I wish were like out right now or just in general. And I tweet a lot, I shit post a lot, and I love anime and Dragon Age. So I guess why I'm here, because this is the Dragon Age episode, and I definitely like twisted Jack's arm. I was like, listen, babe, I really want to talk about Dragon Age.
Yeah,
and
you.
she was like,
yeah.
let's do it. So I'm here. Love Dragon Age, love BioWare, complicated relationship. I know, completely realize that. Anthem, you know what? I wish it never happened. But I'm here. And yeah, ready to talk about dragons and aging and dragon aging.
It's going to get really existential. Also, I want
Oh
to point out
yeah,
that I am here under coercion. Please send help.
yeah.
Um,
Send help and pizza. A lot of pizza. Like Jack really needs pizza in his time of need.
I actually really don't need pizza. I had pizza for
She needs pizza.
breakfast.
She needs pizza.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so video game stuff. Do you have any news you want to talk about?
I don't know if this is news per se, but Total War Romance of the Three Kingdoms comes out in a couple of days, and if you're a Total War fan, please, 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 please get it. Um, Anecdotally, I've heard that it's very good. Definitely not reviewing it for anyone at all for the moment. It is very good. I definitely feel like it is the game. Like if you are someone that's like, I've been curious about Total War, want to test the waters, but I don't really think that the strategy battlefield stuff is my thing. I'm more like a Civ kind of person, more into diplomacy, espionage, all the other cool stuff that comes with like 4X games. I would definitely say don't give this Total War a miss. It's really, really great. In other news though, nada. Sorry. So that's my news. Plugging Total War, a game that I have not worked on, but I just love the series. So it's out soon.
Well, all right. Check out Total War Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which I observed on Twitter definitely needs to be a dating sim. I'm amazed it hasn't happened yet. They have dating sims for like girls that turn into tanks, so
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like this is just such a low hanging fruit that hasn't been picked
I
yet.
know. All these like
Um,
sexy shoujo guys, it should just be a thing right away.
so my piece of gamer news, it's not really even really news per se. It's just so I watched a few videos to brush up for Dragon Age 2, and I just want to say if you are in the business of making video game related media and you're doing retrospectives on games that came out several years ago, um, maybe consider not making jokes that compare compare people to Hitler and Frank.
Ooh,
Um,
woof,
yeah, I was
woof.
watching
Okay.
this
My gosh.
retrospective on Dragon Age 2, and at the end of it, like
Yeah.
this guy, I don't remember which YouTuber it was. It was like a really small one, but on top of having a very boring voice, they then decided, yeah, this would be a good time to make a little comparison between the relationship that some gamers have with Dragon Age 2 and the relationship between Anne Frank and Hitler. Don't do that. Just, especially because, unlike this show, which is unscripted,
Yeah.
presumably in an 8 minute long video, you wrote down a bunch of things that you were going to say. And you had enough time to write that down and then decide to say it out of your mouth hole, and you didn't need to do that. You should between the time of writing it down and saying it out loud, you probably just should have said, I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's your gamer news for the day. And Dragon Age 2 is pretty good. It's a pretty good game. I remember that there was a lot of controversy when it came out over, I think it was One Up. It was either One Up or a different gaming website. It was run by Ludwig Keitzman. It's gone now. Anyway,
I'm a husband. I have no idea. I'm like a little child, so.
anyway, he gave it a 10 out of 10, a perfect review, and he got a ton of crap for it. So
Yep.
I still think that this game might be a perfect game, but I'm not 100% convinced myself of that yet.
Okay, yeah,
But I feel like I
sure.
could be convinced of it, and you're the one who nominated this game, so maybe
Yeah, I
you can
did.
convince me that this is a 10 out of 10 game.
Okay. That is a thing that I could do, maybe. I think I'm quite persuasive. I think it'd be possible for me to convince you that it was a 10 out of 10 game
Hmm.
with adequate oral testimony.
Hmm.
But I actually don't know if I would consider Dragon Age 2 to be a 10 out of 10 game.
Okay.
So, that being said, it is one of my favorite games of all time. I have really only ever given
Interesting.
two games a 10 out of 10. One of those games is Nier Automata. So, for me, I think Dragon Age 2 is a brilliant game. It's probably my favorite Dragon Age game,
Okay.
and I have played them all to death. Literally to death. Played the game until I got so sick of it, I can't even look at the game anymore.
She played the
Like,
game until she
so,
died and had to be resurrected.
yeah. Someone to give me the kiss of life, which for a neckbeard is just more Red Bull. So, that happened. In terms of whether or not Dragon Age 2 is a great game, yes, I completely agree with Jack. And it is the game that I always tell people that are new to the series that they have to play. It's the game that gets the most flack. I feel like everyone hates Dragon Age 2. Everyone's like, oh, 2 is the worst. Just play Origins. Skip the bullshit in 2. Who cares about Hawk and all the other cool stuff in Ferelden? Go to Inquisition, bang an elf, and then ta-da, you're up to date. Don't do that. Please do not do that, okay? I feel like 2 is probably the it's probably got one of the most compelling narrative arcs for side characters in the Dragon Age series. That being said, obviously love the NPCs in Origins, don't want to discount that at all. Still think Origins is some of the most traumatic RPG experiences ever known to man, quite literally. But Dragon Age 2, I would say, just its linearity and its structure and the way that it explored all these themes without needing to fill the void with open world junk, or to fill the void with repeatable content, or to fill the void with, I don't know, like cute looking horses and rabbits to ride. Not that I don't like those things. I'm a Mount Hoarder in Final Fantasy 14, but Dragon Age 2 I think is the distilled experience of peak BioWare storytelling for the franchise. That is my opinion.
Okay.
So happy to walk y'all through it from the beginning if necessary.
Yeah, I mean,
That is the thing I can do.
yeah, I feel like getting like an kind of an overview of the story. Like, again, if you haven't played Dragon Age 2, like, we're gonna spoil the entire thing, so
All of it.
go play it or just stick around and learn about a game that you might have otherwise spent 200 hours playing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for the record, I believe I have like 120 hours in Dragon Age 2, so uh, yeah, you can definitely do
Mm-hmm.
that. Um,
Yeah.
so, maybe before we get into the story, do we want to talk about like the background? Like what was going on at BioWare and EA and all of that?
We can talk about that if you want.
I do want to.
Okay. Well, you're the host,
Okay.
so why don't you start us off the timeline of the whole?
Okay. So basically, EA bought BioWare, and after Dragon Age Origins really overperformed for what people were expecting from it, especially when it came to consoles, EA was basically like, hey, we want another one of these, and we want it in like a year. And BioWare was just like, well, okay, we'll do it. And so they made a follow up to Dragon Age Origins, which I think had like a 4 year development timeline. Like it had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
development underneath its belt. Dragon Age 2 was made in an absurdly short amount of time. And frankly, it's like a testament to BioWare at the peak of their powers that it came out as good as it did, especially like on the narrative front.
Mm-hmm.
The game basically was designed to be tailor made for consoles, which definitely showed through. It plays a little bit more like an action game than it does an RPG, kind of as part of that transition that BioWare has done over the years from, you know, top-down, typical RPG, super deep gameplay into a looter shooter company. And yeah, this was kind of during that intermediate stage. But they had like a bunch of their heavy hitters, a bunch of their heavy hitting writers were still working there, and they have all since left the company to either do their own thing or retire or whatever. And so basically the team crunched down on this game for a year and came up with the idea that I think is a really, really, both really smart in terms of if you only have a year to make a game, here's like a narrative construct that you can build your game around. And is also super unique in the world of video games, which is the entire story takes place in one city, like one location. And by doing that, you're able to reuse a lot of assets, which of course became like a point of contention with people who actually played the game and weren't a huge fan of that. I personally didn't mind all that much. I thought it was just such a unique story, and like I got what they were doing, that I didn't mind that there was a lot of this reuse and not as many new assets being put on screen. So, and it's a story that's told over like I think the span of a decade. And I'll let you kind of get into the story itself, but the idea of spending a prolonged amount of time in this one space, exploring a character's journey throughout time, is really interesting. I think that's really cool and unique.
I think so as well. And that is sort of, I think, what I will try not to harp on about when I'm talking about the game's narrative, because you're completely right. A lot of people say that their main issue with Dragon Age 2 is the size and scope and how that feels so much less in comparison to Dragon Age Inquisition, obviously, if you play that first and you're like a newer entrant to the franchise. But also in terms of how Origins spanned a lot of very different set pieces throughout its different, I suppose, RPG character creation options. And Dragon Age 2 kind of pulling you into this story of the Hawke siblings and centering it around this very personal development type story where you grew with the one city. I think that was very poignant for me. I really enjoyed it. It was a total 180, obviously, from how the game had done it before and how the game would do it later on. But I liked it. I loved it. And hopefully I will eventually shill this game to you guys over the course of the podcast. That is my grand master plan, shilling Dragon Age 2 to everyone and make sure they buy this game and experience it, because maybe we'll get Dragon Age 4 if we're lucky. We don't know. I don't know. I really want it. I want it to happen. So anyway, that is my shtick. That's all I'm going to say about linearity. It's all I'm going to say about the scope of the game, because I could revisit that comment forever in defense of this game. So I will zip on that point, leave that for now. And right, Jack, direct me. How should I start? What do you think people want to hear about first?
I think people want to hear about Hawke and kind of the general story beats that get hit over the course of the story of Hawke, and then maybe an overview of like the companions.
Okay. So I think I can sum up Hawke's general character trajectory with one particular overused phrase. Life sucks and the people you love die.
Yep.
that is really the story of Hawke. As you may already know, if you've played Dragon Age Inquisition, you know at the beginning where Cassandra, spoilers, where she drags Varric into, where she obviously mentions dragging Varric, into the Chantry and interrogating him and yelling at him about Hawke and all the other stuff. You see this happen in Dragon Age 2. You see Cassandra dragging Varric, literally, I don't mean beating him for filth, I mean she literally drags him physically and says, tell me all about the Champion of Kirkwall. in your mind, you're like, who is this guy? Who is this person? Who is the champion of Kirkwall? Surprise! It's Hawke. And that's sort of how you play it out. So the game shows you, I guess, a heroic, embellished version of Hawke in as part of its tutorial, rips all that away, and then just gives you pain. Just a lot of pain. You know, pain upon pain upon pain. And that is how Hawke generally, I suppose, is portrayed as a character, someone that goes through so much suffering, so much pain, and still rises above. I mean, you can rise above sassily, aggressively, you know, benevolently. But the crux, I think, of Hawke's character and what makes Hawke so compelling is that you can relate to bad shit happening to someone. And you can relate to having to do what you need to do to get yourself by, to get your family by. And kind of having the whole story focused on how your character deals with seemingly ordinary decisions compared to the warden, for example, or to the inquisitor. That's what makes Hawke's personal story so compelling. So I think if we're talking personal beats, maybe we have
Well,
Hawke.
can I hop in
Oh,
real
yeah,
quick? I
of
think
course, yeah.
another thing that makes Hawke really stand out is that Hawke is an established character in
Mm,
the world outside of the player. So whereas like the Warden and the Inquisitor are really like self-insert characters in a way,
mm-hmm,
Hawke has their own thing going on. Like whether or not you're
mm-hmm,
playing Lady Hawk or
mm-hmm,
Man Hawk,
mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
you like they have other things going on that happen off screen that you aren't necessarily a part of, and um, part of how this game really emphasizes that is that you're not 100% sure what Hawke is going to say when you choose different responses to situations.
Mm,
It's not, you don't have like the clear dialogue, not wheel, but the clear dialogue tree like you did in
mm-hmm,
Origins, and you have and instead it's just kind of like, do you want to give kind of a mocking response or like a kind response or
mm-hmm.
a dick response,
Yeah, that's a
um
good way to put it.
and so instead of being I think it plays into what you're saying about this is a story that you're being told, and or
Mm,
maybe in some ways you're playing it more as Varric than as Hawke,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
where the way Hawke reacts to things is maybe a little bit more up in the air because Varric is telling this story of what happened and it's not 100% accurate. Um, so and that's another thing I really like about the game is the unreliable narrator aspect.
mm-hmm,
That it shows you right off the bat. Like Varric isn't telling a 100% true story right at the beginning. Um,
mm-hmm,
and I think that's meant to invite some skepticism as to the rest of the story that he's telling.
mm-hmm.
Um, so, yeah, sorry, just wanted to put that out there. Um, so, what are some of the major like life events that are going on?
Okay, so major life events, I would probably say we have. I'm just gonna go over, I guess, from the prologue onwards. So I'm going to count the stuff sort of pre. I'm going to count the stuff in the game's tutorial as life events because they're really quite meaningful. So I would say for Hawke, regardless of whether you play Lady Hawke or Man Hawke or Blood on My Face Hawke or whatever, there's that weird character option we've got. Blood on Your Face, irrelevant. So we have Hawke.
Just wash your face.
Uh,
Just wash
yeah,
your face, Hawk.
you know, Lady Hawke just. I mean, I get it adds a certain appeal, but anyway. So Hawke, we set the scene with the Battle of Ostagar. Okay, so Hawke's family's from Lothering. And for those that are, I suppose, familiar with the franchise, you will know that Lothering is in Ferelden, kind of like part of the South Reach portion of the Dragon Age universe. Um, and it used to, I suppose, have really close ties with Redcliffe and the Dwarves in Orzammar, and those things will come up in the story later on. Anyway, Hawke from Lothering, Battle of Ostagar happens. Lothering destroyed. Darkspawn just rail it. They're like, hey, we rocked up in Lothering, boom, gone, destroyed. Hawk's family, clearly not Darkspawn, in danger, has to get out of town. So they're all packing the go bags, chugging along.
Getting takeout.
Getting takeout, PF Chang's, whatever the equivalent is in Lothering. Run to a huge ogre, and one of Hawk's siblings dies. Depending on your class choice, and I think your lady or male Hawk choice, the sibling is different. So either your brother Carver or your sister Bethany dies. Obviously, big plot point. The family meets Flemeth, sexiest dragon alive. Don't ask.
Also, Captain Janeway.
Yeah. So, sexy dragon lady Flemeth, Captain Janeway, meets the family and brings them to a new life in Kirkwall, which is essentially an old slavers' city, where people that have fled Ferelden because of the Darkspawn are congregating. And long story short, you scam your way in, thanks to your shady uncle, and you start a new life in Kirkwall. And that's sort of where the game's tutorial stops and where you start building the story of Hawk. So my issue, I suppose not issue per se, but my issue with, I guess, telling the major Hawk story beats is that they all, once you enter Kirkwall, they all involve different NPCs, right? So for some context, Hawk has come to Kirkwall with Aveline, who lost her husband Wesley on the road to the Darkspawn. Very sad. You can't bang Aveline. Don't even think about it.
I thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, we all did. Guilty, but can't happen. Essentially, what the game does is the game fast forwards you 1 year from when you enter Kirkwall, and it tells you, it gives you like a little montage, like a Eye of the Tiger-esque montage of how all your mates are doing. So you've got Hawk and their sibling doing usual scammy, semi-illegal stuff.
Yeah, let's be real. They're doing illegal stuff.
Okay, definitely illegal stuff. To get by.
Super illegal.
Extremely illegal. We're talking working with smugglers, working with people that crack heads to get money. And if your sister Bethany is alive, you're also keeping her hidden from the Chantry. And if she's not alive, you're keeping yourself hidden from the Chantry because you're a magic user. And as you know in the Dragon Age universe, magic users, no one likes them, especially not in Kirkwall, which is supremely conservative and anti-magic.
So by the way, related conversation, where do you fall on the mages versus oh gosh, what are they called? Templars. Yeah.
Okay. So it's
a sticky ethical situation.
It is stickily ethical. So I am obviously very, very pro mage. I don't think anyone should be locked up in a tower like some kind of house slave and like forced to perform magic or forced to be lobotomized because of things they can't control, because you're born with magic. Right. You can't control the way that you are. And I mean, maybe as someone who is queer, I relate to that kind of story more. But I could never condone the way the Templars want to do things. It obviously is a larger part of a big conversation because Dragon Age 2 especially kind of really, really hones in on that moral conflict. It shows you some of the absolute worst that both sides have to offer, I think. And it makes that conversation very hard to have after Dragon Age 2, but I still don't think that I don't think that having one bad terrorist egg really should
those
damage.
dang terrorist eggs.
Yeah. I think that there's no justification to ever take away someone's free will the way the Chantry does when they think that mages can't be managed. And I think the system is fundamentally broken. I think Vivian has an okay idea in Inquisition about how to manage the whole thing, to give mages education, to give them structure. But in terms of the Templars, and I think let's just narrow it down to this game's context, I guess, just for clarity, I could never condone it, so I am definitely pro-mage all the way.
Okay. That's fair. Like, I'm slightly conflicted because on the one hand, like, I'm with you, like, mages, 100%, should be free, should be able to do, live their life.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you're living in like a medieval town and like someone who can shoot fire out of their hands walks up, what are you gonna do? Like, they can shoot fire out of their hands. They can incinerate your entire town. So like what, like, I guess, what is the option for like a quote unquote like muggle in this universe, right? Like,
I see what you mean.
there's like there seems to be like some way where you would have to like come up with a different system wherein mages and Templars are able to coexist in some fashion, but Dragon Age as a universe never figures that out, which is a little frustrating. But I mean, it also makes sense where like, how would you even figure it out? There's not like a good solution to it.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that I don't think the series is particularly interested in really exploring it to that degree. I really feel like it's just the central conflict plot device that ties everything together. I don't think we're ever going to get real resolution on ways to manage that. But like I said, if you're someone that has played the games and you kind of know what I'm talking about when I say that Vivian's idea is not terrible and not shit, I think that having a way to educate the populace about magic also makes people that are kind of just peasant farmers less terrified of a guy that can shoot fire out of their hands.
Yeah.
I guess. So something like making sure that the barriers between the muggles in the universe and the magic users are broken down would be the most helpful. And I can see Vivian's idea, the whole everyone fears mages because there's no education. If we educate mages, they're more in control. If we educate the populace and kind of work with them, then there's less miscommunication, less fear. That kind of slow burn change stuff I think makes sense procedurally for me.
Especially with Templars being abused themselves.
Yeah, and that too. I think it's not as easy as just saying that the Templar system is like this system that believes in the righteousness of the Chantry and so oppresses everyone because of it, and that they absolutely have no other way of functioning. I think that the system is fundamentally broken. Inquisition will tell us this. Dragon Age shows us the effects of what happens when it goes wrong. Inquisition brings you in before it all goes wrong and shows you that whole mess that the system really is. And I think that both the Templars and the Circle need immense amounts of change to make things happen, but neither can exist the way that they currently exist in the universe at the end of Inquisition, and hope to really kind of bring mages and Templars in the world together. Like, I think you really need hard reform on both sides for it to work, but the game will likely not cover that. If we ever get a Dragon Age 4, it's going to be Tevinter and blood magic and multiplayer shooting or something.
Yeah, the Muggle solution to mages is just guns, it turns out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great. Sorry, we got sidetracked. But I do think like that conversation is especially important for Dragon Age 2, because a large portion of it does involve questions of like, well, how do you deal with these mages? And how do you deal with these Templars? And like the nature of persecution and power structures, and kind of what you were hinting at the when you were setting up the prologue is how people get ahead in a system like that. And I think that Dragon Age 2, kind of to your point, like life sucks and then you die, but also like your success in life is built on like the bodies of others because of the broken systems that make up our world. Like Kirkwall is literally called the City of Chains because there's so much like slavery going on. And like as each portion of the game kind of time skips ahead, Hawke progresses in society and like gets more wealth and status and fame, but it is always at a cost. And it's not necessarily at the cost of your companions, but it's at the cost of people around that small circle of allies.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I suppose that segues very neatly into Act One, I guess, of Dragon Age
Yeah.
2, whereby you meet all of the allies, and there's a little, like I said, Eye of the Tiger montage where you get to meet everyone that has been involved with your life. So the game will introduce you to Varric very, very quickly, which you would have already met before in these cutscenes whereby he's getting his head punched in by Cassandra, my problematic fave. So you see Varric.
Yeah, I have a picture of her on my
Yeah.
wall.
Oh, bless. What a babe. Anyway, aside from Cassandra, who I definitely don't want to bang like all the time, so we are introduced to Varric, and Varric kind of actually sets up the entire route of Hawke's motivations for the next couple of acts within 2 minutes. It's pretty impressive, actually, that they do this, and they tie in all this stuff about Orzammar, about the Dwarves Merchants Guilds, and about Varric's backstory and about Varric's brother, literally in about 2 to 5 minutes. And I think they plant the seed is what they do in Act 1 for pretty much every NPC, and that's one of my favorite parts about Dragon Age 2 is that you see these seeds planted very obviously. They're not trying to hide that it's a significant plot point at all. No subterfuge whatsoever. They plant these seeds very early on, and you actually see these seeds through to the end, through to completion.
Yeah,
And that's why I really like
it's
it.
basic setup and payoff, which, like, in terms of video game storytelling, we don't get a whole lot of really good setup and payoff. Like, gosh, video games are starved for quality storytelling, but
Yeah.
Dragon Age 2 in particular, like, while it has a bunch of technical shortcomings, which we'll eventually get to, the narrative and the structure of this game is so tight that it really it really gets set apart. And we're getting a little bit more deep into that, but that's definitely something that I also noticed and really appreciated about this game.
Cool.
Sorry.
I agree. No, no, that's good. Like, honestly, I'm going to ramble a lot, so feel like you need to reel me in. Do it. Um, I stick. To I'm gonna stick to my major beats for Hawk. So I'm gonna do this by inadvertently jumping the gun with Jack's plan and mentioning NPCs because you're just going to have to at this point. And how some of these beats go will obviously depend on what you've done with the NPC.
Well, yeah,
So,
like this entire this kind of goes with the game narrative being really tight, but the game itself is all about like how systems interact, and systems are made up by people, and so we I guess we can't really continue in talking about the story until we understand all of the players, all of the characters. So yeah, take it away.
yeah, exactly. So Jack is completely right. So if you're someone that's come from DAI, I'm gonna stop saying Inquisition now because it's a long AF word. DAI. Let's for real rewind, fast forward, whatever. Fast forward to DAI, right? And you remember questing through the hinterlands for like 30 to 50 hours, and
Don't do
your
it.
whole thing. Don't do it, please don't. Please, literally quest anywhere else. I beg of you, anywhere else. But so hinterlands, right? Your whole thing, your system, the way you gain power, the way you progress, is basically convincing people that you are the shit. You convince them that you are the shit by killing things, or by fetching things, or by interacting with requisitions and performing, rituals for the Inquisition. They give you items that then give you prestige, or you go to a war table and you blah blah blah, and you flip a card on a table and that somehow affects something half a world away. Dragon Age Inquisition is really good at that stuff. The building the gigantic world to make you feel like you're a part of a bigger political picture. Dragon Age 2 just says, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. Fuck it. Just fuck it. Your whole life is Kirkwall. Your whole world is Kirkwall. And your systems, how you progress, these are intrinsically linked to the people that you meet and the people that you form relationships with. So whether these be romantic, be friendly, whatever, your whole shit, your strength comes from how tight you are with your core group of NPCs that are forced to rely on you and how you're forced to rely on them because of circumstance and or RPG writing. Who cares? Plot armor, whatever. The reason, irrelevant. What is, I suppose, important to remember when you think about DA2 as a story, think about Hawke as a protagonist, is that you are reading and experiencing a story that has kind of already been written by Varric. Just to go double back to Jack's point. So essentially, because Varric writes shit like Hard and Hightown, and is a novelist and is obviously a very, very accomplished fiction writer, you are going to get stories between characters that are going to be passionate, intense, driven. And you'll find that, like in any, I suppose, Hard and Hightown story, these relationships are the real focus. And that's what you'll find when you play DA2, right? How you get on with your mates, that will basically predetermine pretty much everything. That's my disclaimer. Keep that in mind. So, let's go. Act 1. You meet Varric. Varric says, "Hey yo, I've got a brother." You go, "Cool. I too have siblings. What's the deal, Varric?" I'm paraphrasing. Clearly.
We have so much in common.
Yeah, I'm like, "Hey Varric, you and I, we both have siblings. What it do?" No, Varric says, "My brother needs someone to help him find some shit in the Deep Roads." Now, this should be pinging you now. Deep Roads, Darkspawn, the Blight, super, super, super dangerous shit, right? You don't really want to get involved in that, but you need money. For whatever reason, you need money. Okay? Your family's been living hand to mouth, even though you've been doing okay for like a year. You're paying off all this debt that your uncle owes because he's a crazy gambler. You need the cash. So your whole motivation for Act 1 is basically saving up money to join Varric's brother in the really dangerous Deep Roads to find some treasure to make your life easier, right? That's the whole thing. So at this point in time, the game goes, okay, the whole setting of this game is Kirkwall, but you can occasionally visit little kind of pockets around the vicinity of Kirkwall. So that's how the game opens up at this point. It says, okay, there is Sundermount, where the Dalish live. There's the Alienage, where you're going to find one of my favorite companions ever. There's the Underground, where you're going to find one of my least favorite companions ever. There's, the Hanged Man, where Varric hangs out, where you also, encounter other great companions. Point is, the game will shunt you around to different small locations, and it's the game's way of saying, hey, here's everywhere that you're basically going to visit on this game. We're going to knock it out pretty early, because those locations are not important. They are just set pieces for the character relationships. So in Act 1, you meet the Dalish, and you meet Meryl, who is a blood mage. Spoilers, sorry. She's a blood mage that Flemeth knows about. You also meet Anders, who is a mage, not a blood mage, but a dickhead mage. Sorry, spoilers. You also meet other people.
We're spoiling everything. It's fine.
Yeah. You meet a whole bunch of other people like Fenris, who is an elf who used to be a slave, who was tormented by magic. You meet Isabella, a pirate, who has had a ship stolen and needs to get it back, and she's involved with the Kunari somehow. And you basically learn about all the different political relationships that seethe kind of in the underbelly of Kirkwall. You learn about how the Templars hate the Circle. You learn about how the Circle abuses people. You learn about how the Kunari are here. You learn about how xenophobic people in Kirkwall are. You learn about the slave trade in Kirkwall through Fenris. Obviously, you learn about Tevinter. You learn about blood magic. The game sets up pretty much everything important in Act 1.
Well, and Kirkwall itself, it like just worth noting, is like this melting pot of all of these different cultures and perspectives throughout Thedas. So like you end up learning a whole lot about the Kunari and Tevinter and blood magic and all of these things that weren't 100% fleshed out in Dragon Age Origins. And so if you're interested in like lore and world building and that's all very interesting, but it also plays an important role in character motivations for like what's going on in the story.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that front. I think that it gives you like a crash course in pretty much
Sorry.
A crash course. It's okay. It gives you a crash course in pretty much all the conflicts that make up the wider part of the Dragon Age universe. So one criticism that I have heard a lot about DA2 is that it kind of feels like it crams all this stuff into Act 1. It's like blah blah blah, all these factions, all this fighting, all these characters, what's happening, no one knows. That's been one of the critiques, I guess, Dragon Age 2. But it throws you all this information and kind of just really goes, do what you want with it. It's whatever. How you treat your companions and how you move forward is entirely up to you, and that will change how everything functions. But you've got all the information, now you make the choices. So like what Jack was saying about the payoff, that's kind of where you start seeing these seeds grow based on your choices. So for Hawke, I would say main story beats over the course of this. Once you meet all your characters and your NPCs, you've got Hawke going to the deep roads to find treasure. You've got treasure being supremely cursed. I mean, supremely.
Yeah. It even like let's be fair about it. That treasure just looks like, even if you didn't know anything about it, it looks like it's bad. Just don't touch it. Don't be around it.
Exactly. Treasure, super bad. Super, 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 super bad. You get the treasure coming back to Kirkwall and basically throwing a wrench in the whole ecosystem because it starts to basically possess people. It's Red Lyrium. This is the Red Lyrium shit that Varric hates in Dragon Age Inquisition. And this is the reason why, because his brother finds it in DA2 and it just runs rampant throughout Kirkwall. It messes with pretty much everyone because it's cursed, it's cursed. It whispers to you or something. You saw what it did to the Templars in DAI. It does much worse in DA2, and so you see the effects sort of up close. But jumping the gun, Red Lyrium, cursed. Hawke had to find it, goes, not my deal, someone else deal with this. I'm going to become like a duke, like a nobleman. I'm going to provide for my family, get rich off the deep roads, and kind of elevate my status, right? Look after my mom, look after my family, all that shit. Hawke's mom dies because of
a serial killer.
To a serial killer. And there's like a whole other backstory there about how the Templars are going, completely cuckoo. Whole other backstory there about how blood magic is finding its way into Kirkwall. You have Fenris's old master coming back, the Tevinter mage who wants to basically enslave Fenris and treat him like crap. You've got things escalating with the Chantry that Hawke gets involved in when he finds out that they're basically abusing mages in the circle. And you find out that awful things are happening there. They're all getting lobotomized and it's terrible. People are turning into demons.
Yeah, things aren't going great.
Things are going awfully. And Hawke is involved in all of these. At some point, Hawke's companions and Hawke piss off the Arashok, who is the Qunari leader.
Yeah, they arrive like halfway through the game, too.
Yeah, they just kind of show up. They're just like, "Ayo, we've got some explosives. What's happening?
We live here now."
Yeah, they live there. They want to convert people to the Ku and take away their free will, apparently, is what people are, is how the people at Kirkwall see it. So there's that conflict there. Hawke gets involved in that. Basically, I can sum up Hawke's entire story beat by saying all my NPC friends get involved in some fucked up shit and I have to help them.
Yep.
That is it. All these fucked up things are somehow to do with Kirkwall. All these fucked up things add to the tensions in Kirkwall as well, and all these fucked up things eventually result in one of my friends blowing up the Chantry.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and just real quick, one of the things I love about the Qunari just showing up is that throughout the entirety of the first game, we only met one Qunari, and he was like, an outlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time we see like serious, fully invested Qunari, and it's really just interesting because there's a ton of fear mongering around them, but they're not actually like crazy. Like, they just have a vastly different society and outlook and perspective on life. And so and one that might be incompatible with, other perspectives. And so, but maybe it's not. So there's like that tension of like trying to figure out how to navigate around this other faction that just shows up and has entirely different priorities from what the current system prioritizes. And again, it's just one of those ways that the game really makes things more complicated and interconnected because, the Qunari being there certainly doesn't make the blood magic easier to deal with. It certainly doesn't make the red lyrium crazed demons easier to deal with. It doesn't make it easier to deal with when there's suddenly a terrorist attack in the middle of this city. And yeah, one of the things Dragon Age 2 does really well is escalate the conflict. Because it starts out and you're just like a low-level thug, and suddenly you're catapulted into fame and riches, and at the beginning of the game, that fame and riches, those were going to solve all of your problems. But instead you get to this next level. You succeed with a cost. It costs Varric his brother. It costs the town a bunch of lives. But, supposedly, now all your problems are going to be solved. But then they aren't. There's still a serial killer out there who killed your mother. There's still, like, that Tevinter blood mage and trying to take control of Fenris. Like, yeah, so it's swapping out your previous set of problems for even higher stakes problems because you now have wider influence and wider power. You can now screw up everything more. You're a bigger target. And I think that's just a really interesting dynamic to have in a game. And maybe I'm like overthinking it and giving it too much credit. I'm not sure. But yeah. So Fenris was your favorite companion?
Fenris is my favorite companion. He's like my son. And Isabella's a close second for like very different reasons, aesthetically and like, but Fenris is my favorite. I think he's got the story that I resonated with the most. I found him really compelling as a character. I found his backstory and his family issues very well written, and I kind of feel like he was meant to really be the coin to Anders, right? They're both on either side of the whole Templar magic debate. But while Fenris had very strong opinions about mages, when you kind of get to know him and kind of come around to him and he becomes more tempered as a person, he stops saying awful extremist things. Anders, not so much.
Anders is just a giant dickhead.
Yeah, Anders is the mage side of the coin.
Yeah. And Dragon Age 2 actually isn't the first time we've seen Anders. He also was one of the main characters in Dragon Age Awakening, which was the expansion DLC for Dragon Age Origins, but it was like its own standalone story type deal. But yeah, I think for me, definitely Aveline, and I really kept Aveline and Fenris in my party most of the time. Sometimes I had Meryl in there. I'm a sucker for blood mages. I think they're really cool. And often...
Okay, alright, blood mage.
Often they have really terrible backstories, and I love terrible backstories. So, yeah. So, I guess kind of... We've gone over some of the details. Did you play with the DLC for Dragon Age 2?
I did play with the DLC, yeah.
Okay. So I didn't. So does Sebastian add anything really significant?
Sebastian is a character that I
seemed boring.
personally dislike. he is kind of the Cullen of Dragon Age 2. Sorry to all the people that love Cullen as like a romance option. I love Dorian and Cullen together as a concept in Inquisition. Don't so much love myself, the Inquisitor, with Cullen, because obviously I went with Solus because I am a masochist. Anyway, whatever. Another time. That's a discussion for another time. Um, Sebastian is basically the quintessential Chantry boy. Super conservative views on a lot of things. Apparently, he has a sexy accent. Doesn't do anything for me. But he essentially, I suppose, gives you more of a window into the whole Chantry Templar dynamic. Because while Fenris was the advocate for that mode of governance in Dragon Age 2, he's not a Templar. He's not a member of the Chantry. He is literally a foreign elf from a different country, reading into projecting his own issues and experience with magic onto Kirkwall. He's not actually familiar with the system. So Sebastian is kind of, in a way, your way in, right, to the mode of thinking that these people have about mages and whatnot. But it doesn't go deep enough, in my opinion, to really be of use. I think I learned more about the Chantry and how they view mages and how all that stuff works in Inquisition through playing through the Red Liam Templar storyline than through playing with Sebastian. So to me,
Okay.
it's hit and miss. That's just my 2
Okay.
cents.
Well, so how does this game end? And does it end on like a strong note? I feel like some people are pretty split on how Dragon Age 2 ended.
For me, I think it ended the way that it had to end. I think that it ends on some unpleasant choices, and it ends on some very polarizing choices. But that is the way the game had to go. That's the way that the threads were set up, in my opinion. It was never gonna be a good a good everyone wins, everything's happy ending, because like I said, in the first 10 minutes, you have family members die. Throughout the game, you get all these choices ripped away from you, all these people ripped away from you, all this senseless loss. I think you would be really naive to think that the game would end in a way that would give you positive closure on a lot of issues. So to me, it ended the way that it had to end. There was only one way things could go with Fenris, or a couple of ways if you're, not going to make that decision. But the minute they set the minute they set Anders on that path, there was no way you were going to get like a happy.
Yeah.
It was always going to end complete shit.
I got so mad when I was playing that
Mm-hmm.
game for the first time. Not at the
Mm-hmm.
game, but just at Anders.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Yeah.
he he done messed up.
He really messed up. This guy messed up a whole lot.
It's
Like
almost
the
like
most messed up.
it's interesting because there are a lot of levels to Dragon Age 2. Like in some
Mm-hmm.
ways it's the story of Varric because Varric is
Mm-hmm.
the one telling the story. In other
Mm-hmm.
ways it's about Hawk, like you're the player
Mm-hmm.
character.
Mm-hmm.
But I think really deep down it's the story of Anders and his
Mm-hmm.
radicalization,
Mm-hmm.
and how that has a wider effect on the world because like
Mm-hmm.
for all that Hawk does, and Hawk does become this hero,
Mm-hmm.
Anders is really the one that like lights the match and then
Mm-hmm.
like sets the entire world ablaze. Like Anders is the one reason that they're having like their giant council at the beginning of Dragon Age Inquisition.
That is
Like
true. That is correct. He kind
um
of brings it all together like that. Yeah.
yeah, like so it's really interesting. Like just your talking about it made me put those pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what actually like what actually happens at the end of Dragon Age 2?
Boy, what doesn't happen? Um, so I guess, are we going to count the Meredith Templar stuff as the end,
The
or
what?
what are we really? The stuff with Meredith. and like her whole like Red Templar possession streak. Are we gonna count that as? Is that gonna be the end? Are we counting from the the whole Chantry stuff as the end?
Like from the explosion, like the attack on the chantry. Wow, I had a really hard time saying that.
Mm-hmm.
To the credits.
Okay, cool. So basically, the last quest of the whole game essentially is what you're wanting us to cover, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when the
so,
city's in chaos.
Yeah, there's stuff is on fire. This is like the last episode of Game of Thrones right here. Everything's just like chaotic, just just completely blown out 100,000%. So Anders triggers a bomb that he's put beneath the Kirkwall Chantry, and it kills everyone inside. Like no survivors. We're talking everyone absolutely dead, completely dead.
And it kills like some of the people who are like advocating like moderation too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it kills everyone in the Chantry building, kaput, gone. So because of that, the Knight Commander Meredith, who's in charge of the Templars, she invokes the Rite of Annulment, which basically gives them free reign to kill any and all mages. Essentially.
That doesn't seem like I know I was kind of like in the middle when we were talking about this earlier. It doesn't seem like an option that should be on the table in the first place. It seems like someone should have, much like the gamer joke I was talking about earlier, someone between like writing it down and saying it out loud probably should have said we probably shouldn't.
Yeah, so that's a thing that's happening. So Rite of Annulment, and then the game will force you to pick between the mages and the Templars. So conceptually, you're either going to support the mages who are all going to be killed because Anders went loco, or you support the Templars who are bound by duty to kill all the mages. That is basically what the situation is. And you're whichever side you don't, if you have to pick a side, or basically Kirkwall will fall and it will just be riots in streets and people killing each other senselessly about everything. So that is kind of what happens. You fight your way through it. It doesn't really matter who you pick. You still have to fight your way through Kirkwall, because obviously whichever faction you're not siding with populates in the city anyway, and they oppose you, right? So you fight your way to the gallows, where you then basically have to deal with Meredith. If with her attacking the circle, if you pick the Templars, you fight the Blood Mages, who have basically, in their desperation, turned to blood magic to defend themselves against the Templars, or vice versa, depending on what you do. Essentially, you have to kill Orsino or Meredith, I'm pretty sure. Like, you kill one of them depending on who you side with. You learn that basically Meredith bought the Lyrium Idol from Bartrand and went completely nutso. Cullen realizes that Meredith is completely nutso, and you basically have to kill her because the sword is corrupting her mind and all the other awful stuff that happens when you have Lyrium. So Meredith dies eventually. Makes you do that.
I feel like, again, there's probably a point between like her seeing this weird red idol and it being made into a sword, where someone along the line probably should have been like, this is a bad idea. We're just going to get rid of this clearly bad and evil thing. Anyway.
So bad or evil thing happens. Meredith essentially gets turned to a red lyrium statue, and at that point, because you're kind of like at the gates of like the main city square conflict area whereby you first show up in Kirkwall, that's like the last battle. It's like you're facing down Meredith in the red lyrium idol. She's crazy, she's powerful. You kill the ever-living crap out of her. Depending on what happens, the Templars either let you leave if you support the mages, or they bow down to you and they go, oh, cool, thanks, mate. You killed Meredith. She was awful. And then after that, the game kind of like cuts. And it tells you about the effects of Anders' actions on the wider world of Thedas. So you're like, cool. And on a high note, chopped that bitch. She's done. The game's like, actually, no, a lot of bad shit happens afterwards. You're like, ooh, fuck, what happens? The game will tell you. So essentially, what ended in Kirkwall and what was done in retaliation by the Templars, even if you don't help them, they still want to invoke the right of annulment, right? They still want to kill the fuck out of all the mages. So other circles hear about that and they rise up. They basically rise up. They're like, we're sick of this shit. You guys are killing us in the streets. That shit's fucked up.
They have their gamers rise up moment.
Yeah, they do have their hashtag mages rise up moment, you know? And then, MageGate happens. The Circle of Magi gets disbanded. And Hawk's group of mates, they also go their separate ways. Hawk disappears, and then you get the Mage Templar War that happens. So basically, the Mage Templar War is where DI picks up when they're all kind of like at the conclave to discuss the Mage Templar murder shit. That's the war that gets sparked by the actions essentially of Knight Commander Meredith, because Lyrium, right? Templar, setting shit in motion, right of annulment, all this stuff is all basically Meredith's fault. So the game tells you this, and also basically goes, you know what? Anders and Meredith fucked up. That's the whole reason for this war happening.
Well, so like part of what makes it really interesting to me is like I said earlier, so in a way Dragon Age 2 is the story of Anders' radicalization, like because he sees this obviously unjust and like horrendous system that's just grinding people up and spitting out their bones, and it letting them live if they're lucky. And so he's not in a position to actually like change the system. And when you're not in that position but you feel like you're backed into this corner, what do you do? And he did, he had limited options, and so he chose a violent path that had these wide-ranging implications. And meanwhile, you have Hawk as kind of like the counterbalance to that, who's going with the system, but being one of the lucky people who is doing the crushing rather than getting crushed. And then you have Meredith, who's like an agent of this corrupt and broken system that the game really wants to emphasize. It's a corrupt and bad system. Like that's what the red lyrium is. So it's there's a lot of really complicated stuff going on in that.
I agree with you. I think it's a lot more complex than the 2-minute wrap up the game gives you at the very end about what happens in Kirkwall, like the quick rundown about your companions, if the person you're boning is still boning you, what y'all are doing, where Hawk is, no one knows. And I feel like that's sort of one of my main gripes about DA2 is that I can conceptually see where they draw these threads between the ending of the game and the Kirkwall Uprising to DAI. I can see the connection very easily. But I think for a game that was all about interpersonal relationships and how those affect and how those give, how those spiral out into a butterfly effect upon politics, upon the world, and how one person and one bomb can really destroy the whole universe, for a game that has all this stock and interpersonal stuff to kind of wrap it up in 2 minutes at the end, kind of felt like that was my one part where I felt, hey, I felt the time constraint, in making the game. That's when I really felt it the most. Not in the linear levels. I can give a fuck about dungeons. They look like they look. Whatever. For me, that was where I really felt the crunch, was the way that it ended. You had this huge build-up, this immense resolution, right? With Meredith, you had all the threads from Act 1 kind of pulled together, and then 2 minutes of maybe Fenris and Hawk are still boning somewhere in the free marshes.
I mean, I think, like, thematically, I think it fits, though, right? Like, this is a story about someone's life, and life doesn't necessarily give you a ton of those really good resolutions, Like, often it's just really messy and weird, and...
For sure.
But yeah, I can see how that would leave a lot of people feeling really unsatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
But I I also like you were saying, like this is a story about a bunch of connections between people, and I
Mm-hmm.
also think that it has aged very well. Like there are a lot of issues
Mm-hmm.
that it raised
Mm-hmm.
in the game. Like there's like a whole bunch of people these days who talk about how games aren't political. Dragon
Mm-hmm.
Age 2 is all about politics. Um,
Super political. Yeah.
like it's in my mind, if I'm gonna like simplify its like political stuff down, it's about how banding together in
Mm-hmm.
a group of with a group of people that you can trust, even if they come from
Mm-hmm.
different backgrounds, will
Mm-hmm.
allow you to survive even under these terrible systems that crush and destroy other people. Um,
Mm.
but that survival and perhaps that thriving, as long as the system is around, is going to come at the cost of um, putting other people down into the dirt. And
Mm.
I think that can apply to a lot of different systems that exist in the real world,
Mm.
whether it's capitalism or, um, I mean, in the game, it's literally capitalism. That's like the first
Yeah.
act of the game is
Yeah.
what's destroying
Mm-hmm.
them. Um, and later you can apply like the later parts of the game to whatever it might be, like religious bigotry or civil rights or
Mm-hmm.
um, you know whatever. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the beauty of a fantasy um,
Mm.
story. That's not the word
Yeah,
I was looking for,
I think
but
so.
like it can be flexible.
Mm. And I think for me, I find it really interesting that Dragon Age 2, which is a game that doesn't really focus so much on the wider political picture of Thedas, it's a game that has a laser focus on these relationships. It actually probably is the most political Dragon Age game created, like what you were saying.
Yeah,
Mm.
like it. And I think it's because we get to know this location and the different factions and the different
Mm.
main characters so well, and we understand their different perspectives. And that
Mm.
understanding is what allows us to dig into like the political battlefield, I guess. Um,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I could talk about this for a long time, and I don't want to bore everyone to death. But
No,
you
I
should
think
play Dragon
it's,
Age
yeah.
2.
You really should. We both recommend it highly. So,
Definitely. Um, well, uh, would you say that this is one of the best games? Period. Like I know you said this might not be a 10 out of 10 game, but here on the best games period, it's a show about talking about whether or not a game might be one of the best games of all time. So, does this does this reach those heights, or is it merely a great game?
I think for me personally, it is one of the best games, period.
Okay.
So, mhm.
What leads you? Why do you say
so
that?
for me, I think it's just I have not played a game quite like Dragon Age 2 since Dragon Age 2. I play a lot of RPGs and JRPGs, but I have not ever played a game, that made me, I suppose, think about the things that Dragon Age 2 made me think about, that made me feel the way this game felt. This game made me feel. And I just think that it is, like you said, a prime example of really, really good RPG storytelling that objectively makes it probably one of the best written RPGs, period, to come out of a Western studio like this. BioWare has so many hits, so many hits. But I think taking into consideration the time that it took to make this game, the way that the studio circumstances were, the reception to the game, the quality of the game, and how it managed to tell a very captivating story, a very personal story, and a very political story all in one. I think that that makes it one of the best games. Period. It does so much with a seemingly or deceptively small scope that is the kind of game that you underestimate. And I think that to really, really get what I'm saying and to really, really get what Dragon Age could be as a franchise, what Dragon Age has been as a franchise, and also to understand why it means so much to some people, to understand the core conflicts of Dragon Age, to understand how you can cover topical political stuff in a game and still have it be entertaining and poignant and meaningful, then I think that you should play Dragon Age 2.
That was really well put. Yeah, Dragon Age 2, I would say, is definitely one of like the top 10 RPGs I would recommend someone play. So I would definitely say it's one of the best games, period. There's just no other RPG like it really out there. There's nothing that really does this style of story, and it's a pretty common style in like literature. And then you see it sometimes in movies, but you don't really see it all that often in games, and that's because like unreliable narrators and like spending a whole lot of time in one location can with the wrong hands at the wheel can feel really restrictive and can get stale really fast. And I think for a lot of people, the locations got really stale. A lot of the encounter design was lackluster. A lot of like the combat was serviceable, but it wasn't like super engaging. And so I think this game definitely has problems, but the reason people play games, play RPGs, is for the story. Like that's the overriding factor for any RPG. And Dragon Age 2, like you were saying, just does so many things that no other RPG really does, and takes a lot of risks in doing that. Like there aren't really blueprints on how to design an RPG with that sort of a storyline, and they managed to knock it out of the park. The way that the narrative is structured, the way that there's all this setup and payoff, the way that built into all of that is a ton of world building that we never really got in the first game. And even though Dragon Age Inquisition spanned like an entire continent and a half, I feel like I still learned a whole lot more about the world from Dragon Age 2. Which is interesting because it only takes place in this one place. And I just think that is such a testament to how well the narrative of this game is designed and presented, and I think that is really good. So that would be why I would recommend it. But obviously, there are people who disagree. Usually we have a section on this show about bad Metacritic reviews that say the opposite of what we just said, but I totally forgot to look that up before the show because we kind of threw this together impromptu. So we'll just gloss over that. Suffice it to say, there are a lot of people who probably disagree, and a lot of those people will probably cite a lot of the technical things that we mentioned. And I think that those things have grown less important over time. So I don't know. I think that this game holds up better than a lot of others. So check it out if you haven't. Ginny Wu, where can people find you?
You guys can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet. I live online essentially. The neckbeard joke was only semi a joke. So you can find me on Twitter at Ginny Woes. That's GINNYWOES, and that's the same pretty much everywhere else. I'm on Twitch where I stream Final Fantasy 14. Jack plays with me sometimes. So if you guys like bug her about it, she'll play with me more. Maybe, hopefully. And then you can also find me on Patreon. So I've got a Patreon under the same name, Ginny Woes. I'm kind of going through a career change at the moment where I'm looking to take on a lot more freelancing work and a lot more, games writing work. But bills suck. So, if you guys like what I yelled about today on Jack's show, I do a whole other bunch. I do a whole kind of menagerie of podcasts. I do one about the Nintendo Switch a lot. I go on podcasts where I talk about anime and hentai. I also talk about, or we'll be talking about Borderlands, and we'll be talking about Riverdale, the TV show. So basically, I love the sound of my own voice. Apparently, people like it too. Who knows? But if you like what I talk about and think that my opinions are cool, you want to hear more of them, if you want to donate, even like $1, $2, it would help me a lot. Um, Aside from that, you can find me on GameSpot, where I review stuff as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like I said, I live online. I'm always kind of around. I love hanging out with people that consume my stuff and like hang out with people that have similar interests. So if y'all like what you heard today, want to hang out, just reach out. All good. I'm down.
Um, and with that, thank you so much for everyone who tuned in, both live and are listening to this after the fact. I appreciate that you took the time to listen to myself and Ginny talk about Dragon Age 2 for over an hour. It was real fun for us, and hopefully it was real fun for you. If you have thoughts, we'd love to hear them on Twitter. You can follow the show at Best Games period on twitter.com. And if you can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Best Games period. If you throw anywhere from $1 to $1,000 per month at us, you get access to special Patreon exclusive episodes that we put out on occasion. But we also put out a podcast every week. You can also find me over on We Wanted Adventurers, where I DM a Dungeons and Dragons game. It's pretty dope. And you can find that at WeWadPod. WeWad_pod. WEWAAD_pod. On Twitter. You should also consider checking out Extra Life. And if you don't know what Extra Life is, it's a wonderful charity. It's part of Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, and basically people play games and raise money for sick and injured kids in hospitals. You can learn more over at extra-life.org. And one of the cool things is if you decide to sign up over there, you can actually choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital you want to support, and 100% of everything you raise goes directly to that hospital to help sick and injured kids. So it's pretty fantastic. My local hospital was able to put in like an adjustable pool to accommodate kids that suffer from cerebral palsy. So that is pretty dope. And with that, I might be forgetting some things. You can find this podcast on Libsyn, iTunes, pretty much any podcasting app. So check us out. And yeah. Thank you again so much for coming on, Ginny. I really appreciate it.
All good. It was fun.
Yeah. And we're going to stop recording.
Cool.
And now I can finally look at the chat. It looks like, oh, Natalie. Natalie came by.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Edward Kolkebeck. Dragon Age 2 does rule.
I have stopped recording my Audacity, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. I did too. I'm just
Cool.
responding to the chat. Some people said hello.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie's here supporting her wife.
Oh.
Anders terrorist tease.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, yeah. I also murdered Anders. That's how it had to end.
Yeah, we all did. We all just fucking destroyed the guy.
Gosh, I was so mad. Oh, sorry, Christopher.
I like how you can see me dancing when I'm just chilling.
And Natalie is being a cutie in the chat.
She is. She's the best. Love my wife.
And Fenris is bae. we could have made an entire episode just talking about Fenris.
Yeah, I think we really could have. I think it's good that we didn't, because I really would have gone to a story like way too much and just spent like way too much time just like getting into that whole thing. Um,
I
but yeah, no, Fenris is Bay.
I really love the way elves exist
Mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm,
in Dragon Age, and just how that's been used to tell some really interesting stories.
mm-hmm.
Um, there's there's probably some problematic elements to that,
Oh yeah,
but
like, for sure,
um,
definitely.
I think it's overall been really interesting, and I'm excited to see where it goes with Solus. Um,
Yeah, because did you play Trespass of the
I
DLC? Sorry, chat,
did.
more spoilers. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
so
chat.
after the whole like arm thing happens and like he's into Winter mustering the forces, and then Dorian's like, oh no, I gotta go back to Winter to like manage my shit, blood magic, blah blah blah. And like I just really, really, really want them to make DA4 a game whereby they actually carry over the villains. You know what I mean? I want like a
Hmm.
real. I want Solus to carry over. I want the Inquisitor to be the one to put him down, because you have to be like you were there with him the whole time, and he rips your arm off. So it's kind of like it feels karmic, to have the Inquisitor involved, and so I really want that to happen. I suppose I really want that to be like the thing. So I know
Gosh.
that they're probably gonna make it like a medieval looter shooter.
Okay.
Somehow they're gonna fuck it,
Okay, so
but.
one of the things that I have wanted for a really long time, because BioWare has this whole crossover thing,
Mm-hmm.
I've wanted since I played KOTOR 2, I've wanted a trilogy of games where like the first game, you play this character insert. The second game, you play a different character insert. And then by the
Mm-hmm.
third game, you play this other character insert, but it brings in the other two characters as companions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, be-
Oh, okay. So like random, well not random, but like a new character, maybe like a Tevinter based character, and then you
mm-hmm.
bring in Hawk and I guess probably not the Warden by that point. Hawk and
The Inquisitor.
the Inquisitor. Yeah, duh. Hawk and the Inquisitor. If Hawk doesn't die in, the playthrough.
Spoilers. Sorry, chat.
Sorry, this whole thing is just this whole thing that we just did, just spoiler central for Dragon Age, just spoiler central everywhere, just like
Yeah.
everywhere. I'm
It's
so sorry, but it's like when you discuss these beats and they're all interconnected like this, there really is no way around it. Like it's just kind of just a thing. So,
it's true.
yeah,
Um, let's see. Do we have anything else we want to chat about? Chat?
yeah. I don't know. Let's throw it back to them. I actually, this is like, I guess it's like Twitch, isn't it? Like you have people that like watch live and ask you things and whatnot.
Yeah.
Never
That's
use YouTube Live like this, but
how do you use it?
no, like I just use Twitch.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
stream to YouTube. I just don't stream to YouTube. Full stop. So yeah, no, it looks like chat's pretty quiet on that front. So
Yeah.
unless
Well,
yeah, I don't know what else, but like you could probably wrap it if you wrap it normally after something like this.
yeah, I usually just kind of throw it back to the
So
chat and see if they have anything going on. Put the Citadel in the next Dragon Age as an Easter egg. That would be a ballsy move.
oh, that would be very ballsy, actually. No, that's actually a good one. That's a really good one, Coco. The dragon. Dragon, Coco the dragon. There we go. Dragon
Dragon
Age
Age.
stand.
Uh.
We stand. We stand the king. No, yeah, that would be really ballsy. I think that actually, if it would be possible at all, with like all that like Fate Rift shit, to like somehow have that be the explanation for how the Citadel works, that would be interesting too. Think about it, like how we got all these different world states in the Citadel, like by default. That would be cool. Maybe. Um. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure we'll have the Black Emporium come back. I'm sure we'll see Dorian again. I'm sure we'll see Fenris again. Like, I feel like the game going to Tevinter has so much potential. Like there's so many good existing characters from Tevinter that are in the game. So,
Yeah. My main worry at this point is just that EA is not going to give them the time or the writing staff that they need to pull off this game.
yeah, I feel you. Luna Aurora says, I don't actually know anything about Dragon Age. I'm just watching for the cuties. Oh, babe.
Luna, you
I
dog.
don't know you, but hit me up on Twitter. Yeah, no, that's fair. Jack is super adorable. Like, I get that, 100%. So, while I understand why you're just watching for Jack, that is completely fine. Also, for the Dragon Age cuties, clearly that we were talking about, like Fenris, Isabella, Aveline, Meryl. You know,
Who are your top 3 Dragon Age cuties?
Wolf across all
Yup,
games.
yup.
Okay. Woo, this is tough. Okay. So I'm gonna go with Cassandra, problematic fave, but I love her. I'm gonna go with Isabella because obviously Isabella is just stunning. And I guess Fenris. Okay, so I romance Solus.
Gosh, you're weird.
But
Judgment. I'm judging
I
you.
romance Solus, but I wouldn't consider him hotter than Isabella. He's hotter than Cassandra, I guess. I don't know. Okay, well, can we do like a joint third?
I feel like I'm
it's
learning a
hard.
lot about
this is
you.
Really hard. This is
Jeez.
really hard because I love Dorian too. I think he's so cute.
Yeah, Dorian
good
is
color.
pretty cute.
So this is really hard for me. Krem is really hot. What the fuck? Like, I don't know what's happening. This is too hard. Can we do like top 10?
No,
Top 5?
top 3. You gotta
God
go.
damn it. Okay, top
Yep.
3. You
They're
know what?
fighting
I'll
to the
switch it.
death.
Okay, I'll switch it. You know what? Okay, top 3 tops in Dragon Age. So we so that will rule out some of my faves. So Cassandra is on that list, obviously. So is Isabella. And yeah, Morgan, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the rest are bottoms, so they don't make the tops cut. So my
Wait,
other
so
faves are
if you're
bottoms,
if you're
I'm
only
sorry.
you're only deciding this because there are only 3 tops in the Dragon Age companion.
There are more than 3 tops. Like Eveline's a top, but she's not my type, really. So, and like I'm sure Iron Bull thinks he's a top. I guess he counts. Blackwall is probably only a top because he only fucks missionary. But we don't have to get into that.
Well, or does he? Like, he is a criminal.
Yeah, but I feel like Blackwall is like the kind of guy that lives on the straight and narrow. The straight and narrow. So, hey, no, I don't hate Shale. Coco says we're hating on Shale. Not true, okay? I just wouldn't want to fuck Shale. That's why he's not in the top 3, because this is like top 3 people that you want to fuck in Dragon Age, right? Same difference.
Sorry,
So that's what
Lokai. This was all my fault, actually.
This is actually my fault. She actually put me on the show. That was her first mistake. So she had to put me on it. We would be talking about tops right now. Sorry. But yeah, that's my top 3 tops of Dragon Age.
Okay,
Romanceable tops.
that's fair.
Crem's a top, but non-romanceable, so they didn't make the cut. So.
Yeah. Let's see. Who would I pick? I like Shale. No, I'm not hating on your boy. Your precious
So
boy.
Jack, I guess, would pick Shale. So Shale
What?
is
No.
in that list.
No. No.
Okay.
No, definitely Cassandra, because she's my hardcore squeeze, and so I'm actually gonna number my list. She's number 1. Yeah.
Wow.
Number 2 would, like, I would say Morrigan, but I also think Morrigan would just like kill me after.
Huh.
I mean, it could be, but I don't want to die yet, so
Okay, fair. Got it. Okay.
yeah. So Cassandra is number 1. Number 2 would be, gosh, who would number 2 be? I know what my number 3 is. I'm just kind of split on 2.
Zevran? Are you pro Zevran?
No. I mean,
Okay.
Zevran's fine. He's just not one of my favorites. You know, I think number 2 might be Iron Bull.
Oh.
Um,
Okay. 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 I see
and
you. I see you with the Iron Bull love. That's all good. Yep. Yep.
number
Yep. I see that.
3, number 3 would be Meryl because I think she's a
Yeah.
secret top.
Okay. I mean, like, I get like real verse vibes from Meryl, but like
Mhm.
that's fair
Mhm.
enough. Like
Mhm.
that's
Yup.
that's cool. Okay. Okay. No, I respect that. Plus the blood magic thing.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly, right?
I think it's hard to be a blood magic user and a bottom, but who knows? Um, Lokai says, "How is Morrigan's murder gaze not the hottest thing ever?"
It's
Like
super
this is
hot, but
why
I
I
also
picked
don't
her.
want to die.
I know, but like you have to like pick a way to go out.
It's like
Like
the
I
whole
feel like I'd
praying
be
mantis
okay.
thing.
Yeah,
Like it
like Black Widow, hot, you know. But I mean, each to their own. Each to their own. Clearly, I have a death wish, and Jack is a sane, rational person.
I
So
mean,
I am all down for the Morrigan. For Morrigan, just like she could eat me after. Who the fuck cares? I don't know. Whatever. Give me to Corypheus. I'm done. I'm happy. Um, but Jack is a sane, normal person that has very logical, good crushes of Dragon Age characters. So
I'm
Coco says we accept all Dragon Age cuties, throat stomping or otherwise. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, throat
Hmm.
stomping is definitely preferred, but
Yeah.
when you can't get that, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. Exactly. So there we go. That is the official lowdown on that stuff. Thanks to people that asked about it or I guess contributed which characters you were thirsting over. That was very nice of you. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
So
Um, trying to think. I feel like I had one more thing I was going to bring up and then I forgot.
mm,
See, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know. I'm too conflicted on Morrigan.
Luna says, "Oh my god, why? What's wrong, Luna? How can we help?
Uh,
Is it the throat stomping?
it
That's
is.
Coco's
It
that's Coco's
is.
fault. None of us
Yeah.
brought it up. Just gonna put it out there. None of us signed up for the throat stomping. I might have
I mean, I
inadvertently been
did.
crushing on Morrigan, but like, that's part and parcel of fucking someone's super. Sorry, I just saw Coco's comment. Oh bless. Choosing Morrigan called for the coochie. Brother, I feel you. Feel you. I would take that deal. That's a deal I'm happy to take.
All right. Let's wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, chat, for sticking around after the show to
Mm-hmm.
talk with us and
Mm-hmm.
thirst with us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all do this again sometime real soon. That was
Yeah,
fun.
let's do it. Let's hang out more.
All right. And we'll see you on the flippity dippity.